In this video, we're going to learn how to use the X and Y axes as a sort of a mirror to reflect points. In order to do this, we need to make sure that we know the difference between a horizontal line, which is one that goes side to side and would have the same Y coordinates on various points. And so this one's horizontal. Make sure to draw a little sketch to remind yourself. I remember this because I think about how the horizon, like if you were looking at a nice pretty sunset on the horizon, it would have, you know, all your nice colors, and it would be like something that you look out that's long, right? Versus a vertical line that goes up and down, which might be like looking out at a cliff or something, like a vertical face. So this is a vertical line that goes up and down. A horizontal line goes side to side. Okay, you're going to start by making a nice big graph. And then once you have your graph set up, we are going to plot the point -4, 3. -4, 3. And now we are going to be reflecting this point across the y-axis. So make sure you've labeled which one is y and which one is x. This is the y-axis, this is the x. And if we want to reflect across the y-axis here, we're going to picture that the y-axis is like a mirror. So that means that my point, my new point, needs to be the same distance away on the other side of the y-axis. So if it's 1, 2, 3, 4 points over here, then it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 points on the other side for my new point. And the coordinate here is 4, 3. Notice that these points are making a horizontal line. Horizontal line that has the same y coordinate. Okay. Now let's go ahead and reflect 2, -5 across the y-axis. Pause and try it now. Plot both the original point and its reflection. Here's our original point. And then the reflection is going to need to be 1, 2 spaces on the other side of the y-axis, forming another horizontal line. So this one is now at -2, -5. Let's try it one more time. This time, let's reflect 7, 1 across the y-axis. But before we start, I want you to try and guess what the reflected coordinate is going to be. Look at the pattern of what's happened, try and picture it in your mind, and I want you to try and write down what that new coordinate is going to be before we even draw it. Do you think it's going to be -7, 1? I do. Let's try and see if that works. So 7, 1, that's the original point, is here. And then we know that it is going to be the same distance away on the other side of the y-axis. And this side is 7. So then the other side must also be 7, making that reflected point -7, 1. So is there a trick? What's the pattern here? So when you look at all these examples, The y coordinate always stayed the same and the x coordinate became the opposite. So make sure to write this down, that when you reflect across the y-axis, the y coordinate stays the same and the x coordinate becomes the opposite. What do you think is going to happen when we try reflecting across the y-axis? The x-axis. Go ahead and set up a new graph and we'll try it out. This one can be a little bit smaller. Okay, once you have your graph all set up, we are going to reflect the point 3, 2 across the x-axis. So now we're not reflecting across the y-axis anymore. Now we are reflecting across the x-axis. So our mirror becomes this line right here. So that means that when I'm reflecting across, I'm no longer going side to side. Now I'm going top to bottom. So my point here is 3, 2, which means I'm 2 coordinates away from 0. So I need to go 2 coordinates below, 2 and 2, to land me at my new point of 3, negative 2. 3, negative 2. What's the pattern? Let's try a couple more. Next, reflect negative 2, 4 across the x-axis. That's 4 units away. So that means I'll need to be at negative 4 down below. Negative 2, negative 4. And finally, I want you to reflect negative 4, negative 3 across the x-axis. Take a moment and see if you can predict where that's going to land before you actually draw it out. Do you think it's going to end up at negative 4, 3? I do. We start at negative 4, negative 3. That's a distance of 3 away. So then I must go 3 away here. So then I must go 3 away up above, landing me at negative 4, 3. All right, let's write our rule. So it should make sense that since we're now forming vertical lines where all the x coordinates must be the same, that when you reflect a point across the x-axis, the x coordinate stays the same. So 3 and 3, negative 2, negative 2, negative 4, negative 4. The x coordinates all stay the same, but the y coordinates become the opposite. Now before we finish, I want us to think about one more context. We're going to kind of generalize this a little bit and try and think a little bit deeper. So let's say that we have an unknown point, but I'm going to call it A, comma, B. So my x coordinate is A and my y coordinate is B. I don't know what those numbers are, but it doesn't really matter because of what we're going to do with it. And now I want to reflect AB across the y-axis. Well, that means I'm going to be reflecting across this way. And I know I should end up with the same y coordinate and the opposite x coordinate. So I should end up with negative A, B. All right, let's try something else. This time, I want you to plot where A, negative B should be. Think about it carefully. Well, I know that my x coordinate is the same, which means that I'm going to be reflecting across the x-axis, and my b coordinate is opposite. So I could tell that this is a reflection across the x-axis. A, negative b. Okay, now I'm really going to try and mess with your head. This time, we're going to plot a point over here, and we're going to call this one CD. Okay? And so now I want you to plot negative CD. Think about it for a minute. See if you can figure out where that should go. Did you notice that the x-coordinate is the opposite and the y-coordinate is the same? That means this point must be reflected across the y-axis. So that means we should go the same distance across the y-axis to have it land there at negative CD. If you find this stuff with variables super confusing, don't worry about it. This is just to stretch our brains a little bit. Rewatch, see if you can figure it out, but don't stress too much. All right, time for the practice problem. So for your practice problem, I want you to reflect negative 3,8 across the y-axis. What is the coordinate of the new point? You can check your work by plotting it on a graph. Make sure you understand how to think about this without graphing it as well.